Sometimes, life is yikes.
And that's okay. You're not alone. Welcome to Yikesland.
Hi guys, and welcome to Yikesland. I'm Chris Fung, and I'm here with my co-host.
It's Johnny Hoon!
And we are enthusiastically here with your favorite podcast about depression and mental health and all things yikes.
Yep, that's right, guys. It's another Tuesday, and we appreciate you guys being here with us every Tuesday, not because you're listening to us and watching us, do odd things on here, but so that you're here in the world with us, because every day that you're here with us and making it to every Tuesday and to the next one and the next one after that and for the foreseeable future makes the world great, and we appreciate you being here.
If you guys want to reach out to us on social media, you can find us on Instagram at Yikesland_podcast. We're on Twitter and Facebook. You can also old school email us at yikesland@gmail.com. We also appreciate you guys giving us a rating or some stars or a like on YouTube or wherever you find us. All of that stuff is extremely helpful in getting the good yikes word out. I will start off today's podcast like we always do. Jelani, how are you?
I am doing okay. Not too bad. It's been... we missed last week because I got sick. So, but that's physical things. I must have ate something wrong. I don't know. But it was bad. But I recovered from that. So
Feeling
I'm
better?
Still alive. Not a ghost. I think, I'm here. I'm here. So I'm feeling better. I'm doing all right, guys. So sorry for missing last week's episode. I know it sucks when we do. But all in all, I think I'm feeling pretty well. Doing a lot of cool things, trying to stay positive and active, things like that. So I think I'm, mixing it up and trying to not curl in a ball and just rock back and forth in the fetal position all the time. So I think I'm doing all right. I think I'm
you look very unfetal right now.
Yes, unfetal. That's the word of the day, unfetal. But I just been able to really get out and do more stuff and be around more people, usually with me, and for me and my depression, it always is kind of difficult for me to be around a lot of people and the world. I like describing it as the world being very loud, right? And so it's reasons why I kind of kind of zone out or don't pay attention to a lot that's going around in my vicinity. I kind of just I just can't take it in. It's just too much.
Yeah, it's overstimulation.
Overstimulation, and while to some people it might not be, to me, sometimes it can be overwhelming. But I've been able to really get out there and try and not get into that zone as much. So, and it's been fun. It's been good, I think.
I'm glad.
How are you doing?
I am good. I had it was Pride weekend this weekend, from recording, and I had a good albeit emotional weekend. But I got to be around a lot of people that I care about. It was only my second time ever attending Pride events, and that means a lot to me. Especially because I'm a person that came out hilariously late in my life, given that I had a really supportive environment and grew up in places that it probably would have been pretty fine, but I just wasn't. So being out now and being able to be around other queer people is awesome, and so that feels really good. I definitely cried at the parade a lot, but it was crying in a good way. And so that was a good time. And I think for me, sometimes, especially recently, if I'm feeling sadder, I'll kind of isolate myself, where it actually is good for me to be forced to be out and around people, stuff like that, because I'm okay, well, I want to just crawl up in the blankets and not talk to anybody. But they say a really stupid thing about how if you smile, like if you fake smile, you'll actually get happier, which is usually used in a really insulting way to people. To be like, here, let me fix your depression with fake smiling based on science or whatever.
Yeah.
But for me, like going out with people and then temporarily pretending to be happy can sometimes actually make me happy. So I think that is part of why I've been feeling good. So I'm pretty cheery right now. I mean, cheery is how I would describe it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because it actually kind of correlates to exactly what I was just saying. Like, yeah, I normally it's I go back to the whole old ways of, old habits of just isolating yourself and just like cutting yourself off because the world is too loud, But being around, supportive people in your support group and friends and positive people in your life and having them have a great time and having, like it kind of being infectious. It's like laughter and happiness can be infectious, as much as it's not so much faking it, but it's like the overwhelming happiness of the situation or the overwhelming like laughter or craziness can be infectious.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like when you see someone yawn, it's like, oh, now I gotta yawn. Oh, but it's very fun just to get out there and just like kind of break, comfort zones a little bit, like where you're normally, or not comfort zones, breaking out of like your old habits, like where it's like, oh, I'm just gonna, everything sucks and, the world's yikes, so I'm just gonna isolate myself and, not think about things or think too much about things.
Yeah.
And so that's good. I mean, it's really great that you were able to, do some stuff and participate in some stuff and get.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of times in my life where I kind of do need to be alone, or like you, I totally understand the feeling of getting overstimulated. And so there's definitely like social situations that I'll opt out of, not even necessarily out of explicit social anxiety, although sometimes it is that for me. But sometimes it's just like I can tell that I'm in a place right now where trying to be social would really drain me and stuff. But then sometimes it drains me and sometimes it fills me up. And it's just a thing where like I've kind of had to figure out how to tell within myself which situation I'm about to be in, And I think so, don't feel bad if you feel tired when you're in social situations, but also like can be good if you can open yourself up to that infectious possibility of, having the people around you kind of actually be your secret source of happiness.
Yeah, it's
complicated. I think it's like it's both, it's both.
It's a very
it's neither
complicated situation. It's both. It's neither. It can be, everything that you need. It can be nothing that you need. It's a complicated situation. The mind is, it's a tricky thing to deal with. But I think it's kind of funny that like we had experiences, especially over the weekend, just like being out there and just, again, we're kind of dating this recording, but yeah, I mean, Pride just happened. Everyone's, trying to get out there and represent who they are and be positive force out there. And it's really great stuff. And so the positivity and the happiness can be infectious, to people, and happiness. And like you said, you were out there and you were crying and having a great time.
Sometimes a good cry is exactly what you need.
Yeah. Which kind of leads me into, we're going to jump into kind of like a couple little small topics before we get to the main topic. But like, this is a perfect segue because like you accomplished actually a small little goal that you had set for yourself for a while back with your running.
Yes, I did. I completed my first 5K. My goal. Oh, thank you.
Woo!
I feel like we should get some sound effects for that.
Oh yeah,
a real studio audience clap.
Insert
put one of those
applause
in there.
Here.
But I did. I ran my first 5K. I had been training, like I told you guys, for 4 or 5 weeks. And I never thought that I would be a person who could run because I used to hate it, and I kind of still hate it, but my secret weapon actually is related to my depression. And it's that while I'm running, there's always a point where I want to die. But at this point in my life, I am awesome at wanting to die, but not dying and keeping going. And so I was like, this is the perfect secret weapon. I'm going to be really strong at this. Because obviously if you don't run a lot, like I had run just a little bit in my life before, but not consistently at all. And like a mile was the maximum that I could possibly run, and I would be exhausted then. But if you it showed me that if I apply myself to a thing, I can actually get it done, which was a good feeling, because a lot of times I feel secretly in my depression brain, I'm like, well, you're not really good at anything. Like this, like you're just bad at a bunch of stuff, and there's no way you could ever do this stuff even if you practice. So like, why even try?
Classic depression brain.
And there's a lot of the time when I'm running that I'm like, I want to stop. I feel like I should quit. And that's like a very similar feeling to how I have felt about life at times, where I'm like, I want to quit. I don't want to do this anymore. So it was good to like have that feeling and like feel the feeling, because it's okay. It's just a feeling. It's going to happen. But then also not have to act on it. And so for me, like running does tie into my feelings about like depression and life and suicidalness a lot. And so it's kind of a cool, fun, like fuck you to my mean brain. And it also feels good because endorphins and chemicals, and it's healthy and stuff like that. And I think I talked before about how it feels good in light of the fact that I used to have an eating disorder, because I'm really hungry after I run, and I got to eat a bunch of stuff, and I have been having a good time, like not feeling like, oh, I get to eat a bunch because I burned a bunch of calories, but I'm just like, oh, my body is hungry, I'm going to eat a lot of stuff. And that feels very free too, and feels really good, like just a natural reaction to the fact that you just did a hard thing. And so it feels good in a couple different ways, but I'm also just proud that I accomplished my goal of being able to run the whole way without stopping. And I actually had my best time ever. So I'm looking forward to signing up for my next 5K and maybe eventually a 10K. Because I'm pretty proud, but I think for me, draw a lot of my like strength at physical activity from like lessons that I've learned from depression and other mental health stuff. So I think that's kind of cool.
Bravo.
Thank you.
I mean, I was super proud of you going through it, and like hearing that like everyone who was part of the group had like gone all the way through, and everyone was.
Yeah, I got to do it with friends, which is awesome. It's good when you're, doing. It's nice to have kind of like a support system where you're all just cheering each other on. And during the race was a lot of fun, because people were there was like a loop or whatever, and so you would run past people, and everybody on both sides, whether they were ahead or behind, was like waving and cheering each other on. And so it was a really supportive environment. It was the big gay 5K to like kick off Pride Fest, so it felt really good, and it was a good time. I think that was a good first race, and it was really nice to be able to do that with friends, and I had so many people reach out to me and say supportive things and stuff like that. So it always surprises me, because in my brain that is solidly lies my depression tells me. I think everyone's rooting against me or doesn't care about me. So it was like very surprising that everyone was like, good job, or like, cheering for us or cheering for each other. And I know objectively that I have a good support system, but it's easy because of my lies my depression tells me to believe that no one wants to be around me or roots for me or whatever.
Yeah, that's
so I was like,
oh,
all these people being supportive, what's this about? It must be a trick.
Yeah, it's you can easily fall back into that where it's like no one really cares, all the classic tropes that everyone comes up with and in their minds to kind of like sabotage themselves, but you were able to do it, and you were able to accomplish it, and like that's really great. Super happy that you're able to like get through it. Like that's super awesome.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Yay.
Clap sound effects. Well, now I am going to throw it back at you with...
Moi?
Oh, yeah. So watch out.
Oh, no.
I'm going to throw the ball back in your court with another little segment. We're going to do... we've called this a couple different things, but like coping mechanisms or like movies and songs and media and stuff that we've been into recently that have helped us through our mental Yikesland.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to throw that one back at you.
Oh, I didn't expect this so soon. I thought I was gonna have to do it later. Oh no! So, if you guys, if anybody follows me out there or anything like that, you've probably already heard me talk about this on other media or on my social media. But I've been raving about a film called A Silent Voice, right? And it is an anime film. And recent release, and it deals with depression, right? It like that is pretty much like one of the a major themes of the movie, but it deals with bullying and things that happen in school that and the consequences in life that it can lead to, and but at the same time, it's also about the bonds and friendship and things like that. So this movie here, I went into it and it was recommended to me by some friends, and they thought that I would really appreciate it, and they were right. I really did appreciate it. And this film, I think, really speaks volume and really is a great representation of, like, for me, especially personally, like how depression can manifest in somebody and certain people, and especially for me, like one of the characters that you see in this, they represent like him seeing the world as very loud, and him not being able to like take in the stimuli very well, and so it was very personal for me because I really connected with like that's a very good like how they were able to do a very simple effect to make you understand. It's like, oh, this is how he kind of sees the world, and this is how people who walk around with their head down or like zone out or put headphones in all the time, like that's exactly why and it really hit home to me about like, yeah, this is very well job, or very good job of representing like that as well. And it's a very, like, I call it a very bittersweet film, and it's like it deals with like that it has some of the classic anime tropes. There's some quirky moments here and there, but I think that it's full of a lot of heart. It has like very human moments, and I think that the cast of characters that they have here, for me, feel the most human because everyone isn't perfect. Everyone has flaws. Everyone has their own thing, and as much as like, oh, some of these characters you don't really like, but like you kind of understand what they're doing, or you kind of like, that's okay. That's what humans have flaws. Everyone has their flaws. There's some things that people do that you just don't like, and so everyone felt real to me. And so this was a film that at this moment, with the number of times I've seen it, still does bring a lot of emotion to me. And again, I'm a big crybaby. I've talked about it before, but yeah, I've on numerous occasions. This has the very first time I was like, oh no, crying like a big baby. But yeah, I highly recommend this film to anybody. I really need to get you to watch it because I think you would appreciate it a lot. But Silent Voice, it's really great. I can't rave enough about it. I talked about it so much already.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. You should definitely enforce that I have to watch it. Yeah,
I need to
and
enforce.
If you guys watch it out there and you have thoughts, be sure to reach out to us and let us know what you thought.
Yes, I mean, they do a lot of really great things, and in the film to like represent like what's going on in these people's lives, and especially the main character that you follow. And again, everyone felt very human to me, so I really enjoyed it. So
Yeah, that sounds like something I would like, and maybe some of you guys out there would like it. So, take Jelani's recommendation.
Highly recommend it. Again, I felt like it's a real story. Like like everyone expects like from their stories, like it's gonna have like this big, epic story, and it's gonna be like, oh, it's gonna have a big climax ending and stuff like that. No, real life is different. Like you're gonna get what you're gonna get, and you understand, like this is the story that it told you, and that's where you end up. And the people who I have shown it so far, like I most of the time now I end up coming to tears because they're going to tears, and it's like, oh, we're in this together.
You're like, not again.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'll probably cry because I too am a big movie crier, or everything crier, but especially movie crier.
I would love to watch this film with you.
You're like, I would love to see you cry watching this film, and then also cry as a result of that.
Camera, and I was like, nothing's happening. I'm watching the film. I'm just holding my phone.
Yeah, I cried when I was younger, but too old for this still. I cried watching an episode of Franklin, that show about the turtle, because his friend couldn't get to a birthday party because he was too slow, I think.
Oh,
that was it.
Yeah.
That was it, and I cried. But I was like too old to be watching Franklin. Like I was watching it like with younger cousins, and it was not an appropriate cry situation, but I still cried. And then I remember when I was really little, I used to cry at a book that I read. I forgot what it's something about berries, I think. But it was like a children's book. And there's this big picture of all these elephants. And I think there's some bears in it. But there's an elephant that had fallen off a trampoline. And he looked embarrassed. That's it. I cried about that a bunch.
Yeah. There's a lot of things can bring me to tears. Like when I was way too old to be crying about stuff, I'd be watching something. I was like, oh God, no. This is bringing me to tears.
Yeah. But I don't think, we've talked about this before, but I'm really into removing like the stigma about crying. Or like people who cry, like I cried during like fights a lot, but also any situation that has to do with crowds, any of the Google commercials, stuff that's set to music, really anything. And I think a lot of it is like people will be like, oh, you're so sensitive or whatever. And, some of it might be that, but I prefer to think of it as being really empathetic.
Yeah.
And then also like being sensitive is not a bad thing. I think in some ways it makes you a better person because
I consider myself
feeling the world.
To a lot of things.
I'm suspicious of people who don't cry.
Yeah. I'm really suspicious.
Seems like they have something to hide.
Yeah, the super sad moments, and I'm super suspicious of you if you don't cry at certain things in life. But yeah, seeing certain people, like when they say it's like, oh, you're just a big baby, or you shouldn't be crying all the time. I was like, no, I can feel the emotion. I feel everything that's coming off. I just, again, empathetic towards things, so I get emotional a lot. So it happens.
Yeah. And crying doesn't mean that you're like. It just means that you're feeling a thing. It doesn't mean that the thing is out of control, because you can still, like, for me, I guess, like, arguments that I've gotten into are, like, if I'm in a relationship fight and then I'm crying and then the person's like, oh, I can't listen to you because you're crying. And I'm like, no, that doesn't mean that what I'm saying isn't still valid. It just means separately I'm also crying, So I'm definitely a big proponent of us just letting people cry whenever they cry and it not having to like mean anything or that they're too sensitive or like be a big deal, stuff like that. So you can always cry in front of me, my yike. I'm surprised I haven't cried on this podcast given the stuff that we've talked about.
Yeah, I believe
I'm not holding back on you guys. Like if I feel like crying, I will. I think it's more that because of like it's not really nervousness anymore, but because I'm like hyper aware that I'm on camera and being recorded and I already have all these other things to worry about, like, do I sound stupid? Will I regret this later? Am I an idiot? I'm too distracted to cry,
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on when you're recording something like this. But I there have been moments that we've talked about things that have been real emotional that like I've come very close to breaking on this podcast.
I'll cry in front of you guys sometime. You'll see it.
Yeah. It's
I promise.
Black, like it's full spotlight, and then just like silence, and then you just start crying.
Yeah, and then we can edit some like sad music in the background.
Yeah. So that's my recommendation for people out there, for some media out there, some cool media that I highly recommend everyone takes a look at and just kind of absorbs, and see how they feel about it, So
I like that. I like it.
Shall we move on to the topic of the week?
Yeah, this brings us into our topic. I'm going to let you take us through this one.
Sure. All right.
This is a topic we've been sitting on for a while for you guys.
So one of the we kind of actually touch on this here and there every now and then, but we wanted to broach on a topic called consistency, right? The pros and cons, right? We're looking at, in a person who has a mental illness like depression or anxiety, how important is to have constants in your life? How important is it to stay consistent with things that you're doing? And are there things that can go bad if you stay consistent with them? Like that's basically the topic of what we're looking at today. Chris, shooting it to you, right? Question: do you have things that are constant for you, like major things that like you must stay consistent to keep yourself going?
So I think that, I guess, looking at consistency two different ways. In terms of consistency, like routines, I think those can be really helpful for me personally when I'm feeling bad, because, it'll be stuff like the way that I was training for running. That was a form of consistency that really helped me. And on the days that I wasn't running, I was lifting so that I can kind of, balance it out and be healthy. So you
can get yacked as well.
Yeah. I don't want to get swole. That's my primary goal. Is to be sad yet swole.
That's right. Sad swole.
But so I think in some ways, those things can be helpful. They could be like a good structure, and some people thrive under structure. For me, I don't necessarily want everything structured though. And also there are other ways in which consistency can become kind of restrictive, and if it's anything to do with eating, for example, like some people can adhere to whatever, types of like healthy diets, but they're not, it's not an eating disorder. Like they're just, I don't know, eating less ice cream or something like that. And for me, like those types of consistency are probably dangerous, and I find them restrictive, or anything that enforces guilt for me. But I think in a larger sense, we've talked before on the podcast about how people who are depressed or have other things tend to be really good at like reinventing themselves and just constantly starting over, because you're sort of going through
back to the drawing board.
Yeah, you're going through these cycles where like the sadness gets you, and then you have to be like, all right, I'm gonna get up, respawn, and like do this thing differently. And for me, I feel like, in a way, I've been so many different people, and done so many like wildly different things at where I live now and what I do for work, and the stuff that I'm into now are all not necessarily, wouldn't necessarily be expected if you saw me 5 years ago or 10 years ago and stuff like that, because I do tend to do a lot of reinvention. And so in that sense, I think I have not been very consistent at all, but that one consistent thing that has existed for me is my struggle with depression and anxiety and other mental health stuff. And so in a meta sense, like the consistent thing has been, unfortunately, sadness and stress. And lots of other factors in my personality have been super different. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. It's just who I am, and it's it's a strength and a weakness. But I think that this is one of those things that I also say there's some ways that consistency will help you and some ways that it will hurt you.
Yeah,
and you just have to figure out where it helps, like where it's a useful tool and where it's too restrictive for you. And so I don't know, what would you say has been a way recently that consistency has helped you?
So, one of the ways that recently consistency has helped me was I had it was always really like up and down, like whether or not I was going to be around like the people who support me and people who like are there. And so like in recent times, in recent, I don't know, modern Jelani era, I don't know what you would call it.
Jelani AD.
Jelani AD after, I don't know. So yeah, in recent times, having the constant of being around that like support system more, and allowing the consistency of like allowing them to be a part of my life and understand like that I need to not, cause here's the detractor, and I've talked about it on like the in case of emergency break glass emergency plan. The consistent thing that I usually did was I isolated myself, right? And I ended up like really being left to my own devices. It sends you down a rabbit hole. You spiral out very bad. And so that was a constant for me, where like whenever something bad happened, I would turn all that anger and all the problems of the world back inside into myself, and then I would just isolate myself and cut myself off from the world. And that was a very toxic thing to do, and so changing that up and actually like being around those who are a positive like force, and who create positive like I have these positive bonds with people, and so being around them and being around those people consistently has brought like a lot of positive things into helping with my depression and moving forward. And like you said, we're constantly reinventing ourselves. That was a complete reinvention of everything that I had did before, because I was not a person that like really went out all the time or really did anything all the time, and I just kind of just like ended up like really just like shutting myself away, and really just turning it all into self-harm and all into I got very raspy there for a second. Turning it all all that damaging, mental, negativity inwards, and just beating myself down with it, and really just, bogging myself down with it. So, breaking out of those that confined, consistent, like toxic, consistent nature that I had for that, past Jelani era. I think that like that, and changing it up, and being around those peoples in the positive force like that I was able to do, I think that has helped out a lot, and also removing toxic people like that I've had, in my life. I think that every now and then a lot of us, and there may be people out there who have people in their lives that have been like very toxic, and as much as they would, as much as they don't want to, like end up breaking that bond, sometimes you have to, in order to, as much as you want to keep, bonds and friendships and things like that going, like it can be difficult to break, old bonds and things like that. But, at the end of the day, you have to make sure you're taking care of yourself. The self-care has to happen too as well. We've talked about this before in past episodes. If you're constantly just worrying about like pleasing everyone else, and you're not taking care of yourself as well, like that's also another problem there. So like I was able to take a lot of the toxic consistencies in my life and kind of just like cut them out, and then I was able to reestablish and reinvent it all the way to a brand new place. And yeah, have I had issues, or have I had like recent problems where like, I might have like had a dip in my my psyche or my mental illness? Sure. I mean, I think everyone, no matter what, I think eventually something will come back, or something will you'll have like a little drought, but with changing the things up and being more consistent, and and more positive, and like looking at things that I like, and things that I want to do, and like trying to keep that a constant in my life, instead of just like looking at something, thinking about doing it, self-doubting and then pulling myself away from it, So, yeah, I think that's like, for me, that's where I'm going with like my consistency.
Yeah, and it sounds like you had an MO that was like the way that you would react to things normally, and realized it wasn't working for you and replaced it with kind of like a better habit, or like one that works more for you, and kind of set things up, like reconstructed them in a way that is still consistent, but now it helps you instead of hurts you.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I mean, because I'm still I'm still a young enough adult that I think about the word adult and I'm like, but like, I'm still surprised that I'm allowed to do the things I'm allowed to do and be in charge of the things I'm allowed to be in charge of. Although I think that secretly a lot of people have that for a very long time, and we're all just kind of doing a fake it till you make it. But I think for a long time, I thought that being normal, and I've talked before about like this fake concept that I have of quote unquote normal that doesn't really work for me, because it usually is used for me to compare myself to like some hypothetical, perfect, stable, never depressed, constantly happy person that doesn't exist. But I always had thought that kind of quote unquote normal people were like super consistent, and I used that as as a restrictive concept that was like, people are supposed to live these linear lives where you go to school and you know what you want to do in school, and then you focus on that thing, and then you do that as a job, and you like date pretty much one person, or you like take every relationship that you have is like the most serious thing in the world, and it has to look a standard way, and you wake up at 6 a.m. and then you go running, and then you go to work and come home and you do the dishes, and then you go to the gym, and I sort of had this concept that to be consistent meant a very specific thing, and that it also meant something that was really restrictive, that was a life that like I guess can never really work for me, and so I used that image to sort of punish myself, where I was like, oh, look, you're so unstable and so wild, and you're off doing all these other things that are like not related to what you quote unquote should be doing, and I think that there was a long time where I used the concept of consistency to punish myself, and to blame myself for being the way that I am, when really that whole concept probably doesn't exist for most people. There's people that might be like that, I guess. But that's not like the quote unquote norm or the standard or whatever. That's just a thing that I imposed on myself to make myself feel bad, which I'm great at. But I think that viewing consistency as a thing that's like an opportunity to help you, but it's like a very neutral tool where routines that help you will help you, and using it as a constraint is probably going to hurt you, is a much better way to look at things. But that's a very recent development in my life, where for a long time I was like, this is what normal people do. Why is your brain like scattered and all over the place? Why do you want to do so many different things? Why do you want to be so many different people? And so I think that hearing, you talk about the ways that you have had consistency in your life in a negative way, and then, turned it around and replaced it with more positive things, makes me feel like I'm more okay. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, I might be all right. And that's, that's a reassuring, it's a reassuring thing. Because I've been talking about the running thing, and that is a form of consistency that is actually helpful for me, that I never have had before and that I never thought I could have. But that doesn't mean that my form of consistency has to be I wake up at 6 and I go running at 6 and I make my life look like I think a good person's life would look at. It can just be you structure your stuff the way that works for you, and not everybody's life has to look the same.
Yeah,
and that's a thing that, and that's a thing that I objectively know, but a thing that I subjectively constantly have to remind myself of, and am only just starting to learn now.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to get yourself to realize, because like, you know, we have all these like mental, you know, hula hoops we gotta jump through that are just us blocking us from like realizing that, because, you know, for a long time I used to think, oh, you know, I guess like normal people have like the, you know, the white picket fence and the house, and you gotta, you know, walk in the house and have the suit and the briefcase and hi honey, how you doing? You know,
in the Truman Show.
Very Truman Showy. But no, everyone, what is gonna make, you know, your mental health thrive, you know, and become healthy actually, is for you to, you know, follow exactly like your own set path of something that's like, it's not forcing yourself to do something, you know, it's or like, you know, but it's easing yourself into something that will fit your life, you know, and will fit what your scattered, you know, psyche will force you to do. Because like with us, it's always just, oh, you know, here's gonna be, here's sad Jelani, here's over exaggerated like happy Jelani, and let me put on these different faces here and there, and let me you know, when I'm not around, you know, in public, let me isolate myself all the time, or let me, you know, overeat shitty food all the time or something like that. And like these are constants that aren't, you know, very healthy for you, or very, you know, great for, you know, your mental health. But at the same time, you know, there are things we can ease ourselves into, like you did with easing yourself into running, you know, and getting into it. And you get a great support group, you know, because you did it with friends, and, you know, there was supportiveness around it as well, from people like your, you know, people who were around you, and people who are your support, like giving you that like little push. Was like, yeah, that sounds really great, that's great, you know, that you're doing that. And that's slowly easing that into your life. And like, you don't just wake up every day at 6 a.m. to do it, but like at the same time, it's like, when you can get it in and you can do it, you feel better about that you did it, you know, and you feel great about it, because you enjoyed reinventing that aspect of, you know, the monotony that you have locked yourself into, you know, because you know, certain consistencies are toxic, you know, and we don't want to always like fall into those, you know. And so changing it up and doing different things and easing maybe even new experiences here and there can help, you know, at the same time, you know. But at the same time, getting out there and, you know, when someone hears consistency, like first thing they'll go to in their mind is like, oh, it's something that is just quote unquote normal in their mind. And most of the time when I go to something like very mundane or very like safe, but at the same time, like sometimes consistently doing something that is outside your comfort zone can be a positive thing as well, you know. I'm not saying go rob a bank or something like that, you know, like I'm not comfortable with this, but I'll join you with this. Let's do it.
But if you do,
but if you do, let me know. I do.
If you do, our Venmo is
join the heist. Our PO box is no, but changing things up and you know, easing yourself into something that is a lifestyle and something that you're able to accept, you know, because in our psyches, a lot of things that we do with our lives, our mind is not able to accept, you know.
I think what I've been thinking about just over the course of this podcast, when you are talking about some things, is I think that it might be a thing where people, you know, this isn't going to be everybody, but for people like us, it can be a situation where your mind is not reacting the way that you would expect it to, based on, like, it's not exactly reacting directly to your surroundings, mm-hmm. You know, like it can be a theoretically good day, like it's sunny and good things happened or nothing bad happened, but like your brain is dark for some reason, mm-hmm. And it kind of feels like a thing where I know that my brain will not necessarily react directly to its surroundings or directly to the input in the way that one would expect it to. And that's like, and that just has to be fine with me. And it can be cool because I think it also makes me experience more things and experience emotions differently or more, and be and I think for me personally that also fuels my creativity. But it also means that it is harder to form, even just like to form habits, because they won't necessarily look like everybody else's habits. And I think that's okay. But I think maybe it's just a thing where consistency has to mean something a little bit different, in order to just work for it. Because I don't know that if I got up at 6 every day that I would be able to run, because sometimes I might suddenly for no reason be like, I don't want to get out of bed, and I cannot, and I can't expect that I can get out of bed all the time. And that's, just how it is now.
Yeah, I mean, we are humans are creatures of habit. We always try and retreat to a very what our comfortable spaces. That's why we the metaphor we've used before here was just crawling right back into that comfortable bed of just put all the blankets around me and world has disappeared. I'm in here. I'm not getting out. I can't get up today or anything like that. And we retreat to that. And that's for us, that's probably one of the most consistent things that a lot of people in our state do, where it's we retreat into our shells and into our what we quote unquote think are our safe zones, but
it's the safety, or it's the familiarity of feeling bad.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that doesn't have to be the only form that consistency takes in your life. But I think it's easy to believe that consistency is either impossible for you because you're depressed, or kind of a bad thing because the only constant in your life has been the fact that the darkness will return.
Yeah, and at the same time, then perhaps it's time to break consistency. Perhaps it's time to try and pull yourself out of it, or edge yourself out of it. See where you can land, and where you can take a first step towards something different. And reinvent yourself a little bit and change it up and see if you can land into a new safe zone. Because most people, again, for us, I think both me and you have talked about in this show of just our idea of quote unquote normal is it's just the mundane, and it's the mundane monotony of we scheduled this time to do this, and then come home and do this, and then wash the dishes, and then that might not be where you're perfect, or not perfect, but that might not be where your life needs to be. Sometimes life can be wild. Sometimes life can be unpredictable. Sometimes you can, be more free-spirited than that. But some people don't expect, in your mind, you do all these things. It was oh, that's not normal. That's, in my mind.
Well, and that's how I ended up here. Is I was burnt out after college and wanted to move anywhere. Mm-hmm. And that's not a quote unquote normal person thing to do. That is not a normal person decision to make, but that's kind of who I am. And the people who care about me and know me know that I'm just gonna do whatever it is that I'm gonna do, and that it's not necessarily gonna look like the next linear choice. And so it kind of, I guess, for me being like this will also weed out people who don't actually care about you, because only the people who could really care about you are left. But I think one good example of consistency would be this podcast. Oh. So I know Jelani has other podcasts, which you guys should watch, but this is the first podcast I've ever done. And I thought that in some ways it would be restrictive having to come do the same thing at the same time every week, but it's actually really comforting, because it's a thing that I can look forward to, and it's a sort of a check-in that I can have. And we always make the joke about free therapy, where it's it happens at the it's something that we can pretty much count on to have in our lives. And I think that's really cool. I never thought we would make it to 24 episodes.
We're here.
And yet here we are. But it's also a thing where there's some weeks that if we miss, I feel like insanely guilty.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
That's
oh
happened a
no,
lot.
I think that I must be a giant failure and everything is falling apart. And it's like, that's where consistency becomes an unhealthy thing, where you shouldn't use it to blame yourself or tear yourself down, because it should be, you should try to just use it as a force for good rather than a thing that, you feel bad about. But I think I'm very grateful that, that we're still here now and that I have you and this podcast to do my free therapy at, and to kind of also be a force for consistency in a good form.
Yeah. The podcast, and especially this one, having these, when these shows happen, and recording these, everything else that's outside of this, area, the camera lens and everything like that that's going on right now, and the conversations that I've had with you or with like other folks who I've had on podcast, it's a great thing that, like, for me, I feel like it's a consistent thing in my life that I feel I'm very grateful for, that I'm able to do this, and for the amount of time that it's recording and the amount of time that we're talking, like, everything doesn't suck, everything is good, and it's like the thing about consistency is like accepting that things can be okay, and you want to get that to be a consistent thing in your life where everything can be okay with you, and everything isn't always going to be complete, garbage truck on fire.
It's nice to have a thing to remind you that life like, even if you feel bad for a while, like, if you stick around, life goes on and you're going to feel good again soon. And even if it's a small thing, like you're sad but your favorite movie's on, or you're sad but a friend checked in with you, like, there's still good coming around the corner even when it doesn't feel like it. But it's not, sometimes doing the podcast is hard because sometimes we talk about difficult stuff.
Yeah.
That's
what the choice we've made with this podcast.
I've done a bunch of therapy, and it is the feeling of it is actually kind of a lot like therapy, because you dig into this stuff that you're like, oh no, like, I'm gonna have to talk about a hard thing now. But like, I do it because I think it's important to be vulnerable and to be honest, and I think that's a strength. But it's like, it feels very similar to that, where it feels comforting to know that it's here, but you also kind of know that you're going to have to do a little bit of hard work while it's happening, because you're about to have to talk about some real shit.
Yeah, especially with our show.
Yeah.
Yes. One day I'll have you on like another show where it's like you'll think it won't be. This will be fun, and I'll just like swerve on you. Hard topic. Here we go. Oh no, I wasn't ready for this. This wasn't supposed to be like this.
I didn't come prepared.
I wasn't ready for these emotions. Oh man, wouldn't that be something if I had invited you on another podcast that wasn't like about like this?
Yeah, and I thought it was gonna be like a chill time, and then suddenly
you broke on that podcast instead of this one first. Like, I'm on a depression podcast. I've never cried, but I came on this one about pop culture and I'm crying.
You never know.
Yeah.
These things could happen.
It could happen. Yeah. Oh. So, but yeah, sometimes consistency, it's double-edged sword. There can be toxic ones, there can be great ones. It's all about what's going to suit your life, and everyone, you gotta think about it. Is the majority of things that are constant in your life now more toxic than they are helpful?
Yeah, it's like, what's working for you, and just knowing that what works for you might be different than people who aren't depressed or aren't anxious or aren't whatever, and also might even be different from people who are like you. Yeah. And so just figuring out what ways you can use that as a tool to help you, and what ways you need to excise whatever is hurting you.
Yeah. Be gone! But yeah, sometimes people like stay in their comfort zones and, live in that toxicity. And then, you don't want to be in that all the time. Sometimes you might need to cut things out. Some people aren't happy where they are, in life. Some people aren't happy with their job, or some people aren't happy with I don't know, like with their car. I don't know, but like I'm not saying that a car can ruin your life, but I mean, you ever seen Christine? That's a bad movie right there, a bad car. But sometimes a well placed and well timed change in your life to something that's a little bit different and a little bit a different sort of consistency can do wonders. You know, so no matter how small. So, well, I think that was a great topic. I like that topic a lot, and I think that's one we can keep coming back to a lot because sometimes, not sometimes, as we reinvent ourselves, going through the ages of our lives and our different shades of yike, we'll see where we are and where we stand on things,
Yeah.
And sometimes the consistency, the things that are constant in our lives right now won't be in the future. Well, who knows?
Yeah,
right?
watch, we'll come back and I'll be like, fuck consistency. Everything about it is bad. No, but I mean,
it's about chaos.
I feel like I've changed my opinion about, not my opinion about depression, like, is it hard? Yes. But I've changed the way that I feel about it drastically over the course of my life. Like I used to be like, this is solidly a burden, and I'm like, cool, I have a superpower. Sometimes it sucks, but whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that we might change our opinion about this, but this is a topic that we've been sitting on for a while, and I think it's a topic that's especially makes sense for the podcast, which is in itself an exercise of attempts at consistency that I think we're both pretty successful at, given,
our hectic schedules.
Life is busy with work and stuff. You're also like a depressed person whose some days are fantastic and some days can barely do anything.
Yeah.
Speaking about myself.
If I was smarter, I would have set this podcast for like every other week or something like that. But like, you know what? The trying to hit it weekly, and trying to, in our hectic schedules in our lives and with our, weird depression brains, like getting together and accomplishing
work
like,
and
this type of
depression,
podcast,
sleep schedules and stuff.
Accomplishing this podcast for me, like, it works wonders.
Yeah.
I feel happy every time we do it, and when we don't hit it, I feel guilty, just like you said. I wish I would have recorded today. I wish I would have did that. Sometimes it happens, but
Yeah.
I think we can get there.
Well, but I challenge you to work on not feeling guilty when it doesn't happen, and just like feeling the emotion for like a second and then letting it wash through you, so that there's like nothing negative associated with the podcast, and just to be like, okay, yeah, I feel like I wish I could have done it, but I didn't. And it's the past, and now it's okay. Mm-hmm. And then just looking forward to the next time that we do it. Yeah. I've been trying to do that with lots of negative emotions. Be like, I'm going to feel it for a second, and then I'm going to let it go.
And accept.
Yeah, and it's the situation. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's schedule is perfect. And you got to adjust. So that's my little assignment for you. For
surprise homework.
For the next time. Although probably, I hope it won't happen for a while, but, people's lives happen, so that's my homework, if you can remember it. For next time is try to feel bad for only a second, and then be like, no, Chris told me I gotta let it wash over me.
just let it wash over me. Just do it. Well, Chris, take us home.
Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you for being here with us on another great Tuesday. We appreciate you guys tuning in whatever form you are. We appreciate your likes or your subscribes or your ratings and all of that stuff. And we would love to hear from you on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. You can also email us. If anybody watches Jeleni's movie recommendation, which is called A Silent Voice. That was a good simultaneous talk. I'm usually pretty bad at those. If anybody watches that and has thoughts, please reach out to us. Or if you guys have any topic ideas or thoughts about consistency and ways that it works for you or it doesn't, or maybe you think that consistency is all totally good and that we're absolutely wrong, you are free to feel that, and please tell us about it. We would like to hear. Please remember that you are not alone. If you need a resource to reach out to that is confidential 24/7, toll free. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. And that's a very important resource for you guys to remember. Otherwise, we appreciate you being here and listening to us. I am proud that this is episode 24.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. And I appreciate you, Jelani, for sharing with us, even though sometimes it's hard, but we do it. We do it for you guys. We do it for us. We do it for each other. And I think that's great in this Yikesland community.
Yeah. Again, any type of consistency in your life, it's something positive like this can be great. I appreciate you joining me on this journey as we continue to talk about, sad boy stuff and things like that. And thank you so much for sharing all your difficulties and trials and tribulations, and and even sharing your positives. Because not everything can be great all the time. But hearing the positives in life can be helpful. Especially reiterating them to yourself.
Yeah.
You ran a 5K.
I did.
Insert clap track.
Yeah, insert audience cheering wildly.
Yes, insert that.
In the French.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. We appreciate you guys. Just let people know about what we're doing here, and so we can build this community here of people who are living in Yikesland. And remember that every Tuesday that you're here with us, even if you don't listen to the podcast, that's fine. You don't have to. But being here and making it to every Tuesday, every single day, and every day after that is the goal, because we want you guys in the world with us, because without you in this world, it'd be a much darker world. So everyone has some light in them, and we want you here illuminating it with us here in Yikesland. So to all my yikes out there, I love all you.
Stay yikes. I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
This has been your host, Chris Fung, along with
Jelani Hoon. I love all of you.
Thanks for being here, guys.